Okay, so on 1b here, C is at -4, D is at 9. So again, as we talked about it, we are going to be taking the average here. So -4 plus 9 divided by 2. So -4, watch your signs, plus 5, plus 9 is 5. 5 divided by 2 is a nice decimal, and I'll take either one, the nice decimal or a fraction. If it's not a nice decimal for some reason, then leave it as a fraction. But if you're dividing by 2, it should always be a nice decimal, as I'm thinking about it. Now, the other thing about midpoints is that they can be negative, because a midpoint, point is a location. It can be positive, it can be negative, it could be a fraction, it could be a decimal, it could be a nice integer. It doesn't bother me. Okay, it's going to happen. So then let's take a look at number 2 here. On number 2, we are starting to move into 2 dimensions. Question 1 was only dealing with 1 dimension, a number line. Now, as we can see for question 2, we have a coordinate grid off to the right, an XY axis. So let's plot H, which is at 0, 0, and A, which is at 6, 0. And we want to start off by finding the midpoint of this line segment. Now, the thing is, this is again just 1 dimension. It's just along the x-axis. So we can clearly see between H and A that the midpoint has to be right here at 3, 0. Now for letter B, HP, okay, H is still at 0, 0, P is up here at 0, 4. And we want to find now the midpoint of, say, HP. Now again, we could just look at from H to P and just also notice, hey, it's right there in the middle at 2, from 0 up to 4. There's my midpoint as well. So that midpoint is located at 0, 2. Now that we could do is because it's just on the y-axis. It's again just 1 dimension. But now we're going to combine these for letter C. C is saying, hey, PA. So P was up here at 0, 4, and A is down here at 6, 0. We now want to find the midpoint of PA. Okay, so to do this, we're going to take what we did on parts A and B, and we've actually already found the midpoint. Because what we can do is continue to take this idea of taking an average. So on the x-axis, we found HA's midpoint to be right here at, let me get a different color, at 0, 3. Then we found on the y-axis PH to be right here at 0, 2. If I brought these two then midpoints together, as I'm trying to do, the two midpoints then line up right here for the midpoint of AP. So the midpoint then is combined together as x is 3 and y as 2. Now, what we did there is, again, we could just look at the x-axis and we got 3. We could just look at the y-axis and get 2. But again, what you're doing behind the scenes is doing an average. So we have now the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula is generic. It works for any 2 points here, how to find it. So we get this generic x1, y1, x2, y2. And with that in mind, we now just created a formula of keep taking the average of the x's and average of the y's. So the midpoint formula, if you were to Google it, it's going to look like this. x1 plus x2, because an average of 2 things is add them together, divide by 2. And for the y's, where we focus on the y-axis, we add the 2 coordinates together and divide by 2. And then together we get what we call the midpoint. You get the midpoint of x, the midpoint of y. So let's use our midpoint formula, because I'm not going to graph every one of these out. We're just going to go through and find this algebraically. So for number 3, letter A here, let's do that. Actually, I've been pausing.